evening, everyone. Welcome. Wrestling with the Future presents What's the Buzz? Tonight, we have a stellar cast and one hell of a subject. But before we begin, let me introduce you to everyone. A very familiar face, a guy who is very well at home on this podcast. He was, in fact, my very first guest on this podcast, Mr. Mike Messier, actor, director, writer, producer, and now let's add author. So that bag is A Distance from Avalon is the book. It's a great read. If you haven't gotten your, go to MikeMessier.com and get it. I'm going to promote it right off the gate.
Thanks, buddy.
Derek K. Long is an actor. He is a musician and a long-haul trucker with a cab full of dead bodies that he's carting through North Carolina right now. Derek, how are you, my friend?
Great. Going good.
Beautiful. You didn't get stopped by the police yet. They didn't see that blood dripping out the back?
No, but it's just a matter of time, before I hit the Georgia line, I guess.
Don't let Scotty McCoy see that. Speaking of Scotty McCoy, how are you, my friend, Scotty?
I'm doing good.
McCoy is a film director. He is a bon vivant, an entrepreneur. His latest, I guess you want to say that your latest is 72. You're going to talk about that tonight?
Yes,
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Terrific. And we have tonight's subject, in case you haven't guessed it by now, is film horror. And right out the bat, gentlemen, I'm old school. I want to show you something I grew up with. Take a look at this. Take a look at this stuff. Now,
Ouija board.
You guys remember any of this?
So Ouija board was the first.
Because I'll tell you what, I was just a wee tad when all this stuff was was the big thing. I was just knee high to a grasshopper. But The Mummy's Curse with Lon Chaney, you guys remember that?
Oh yeah.
These films all have something in common. Believe it or not, they were all considered independent films back in the day. Even Frankenstein was not a studio picture. It was done by Carl Laemmle Studios, who was an independent producer-director. So, Scotty McCoy. So, what do you make of all this? So, why is horror the big thing now? Like, everybody's doing horror. What's the deal with it, brother?
It's entertaining. It's cheap to make to an extent. It's just fun to make. I mean, I can't tell you how much fun it is to fake die on screen. It's amazing.
Mike Messier, why do we love the shit scared out of us?
That's a great question. I think that there's an innate part of the human psyche that likes to be scared, but if you're in the safety of a movie theater, you know that the serial killer or the tragic clown, as it were, is not going to attack you in the theater. Although maybe that's a good idea that we could work on. We could have a theater where there's actually actors coming out of the side to accost the audience, and stuff like Rocky Horror Picture Show to an extent does that, or haunted houses you might go to. But I think people just like to be scared, but knowing that they're still safe at the same time.
And Derek, chime in on this, my friend. Why do we love to be scared?
Why do they like to be scared?
Yes, sir. Why do we like to be scared?
The thrill.
Okay. That about
Simply
it?
Thrill.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's get back here. I love a good horror film. In fact, I have quite an extensive collection of film. I'm looking at right now, probably, and this is no exaggeration, I probably have 1,100 films here. I'll bet you 700 are horror films. And I'm not even lying. I am a collector of film. I love film. So Derek, you said the thrill. And there's always been an element of truth there. But it goes beyond that, I think. I asked everybody's opinion. Why horror? Why do we love to be scared? I think it's more primal than that. I think we like to be scared because it's an innate human emotion, fear. fear is an innate human emotion. You know, it's we love to be in love. We love to be happy. We don't love to be sad. Well, some people love to be sad. Some people are just melancholy. But people generally love to go to that next level, the fear factor. This is why I think haunted houses are so popular. Horror themed events are the big thing. I live in New Jersey. We have a huge place not 20 minutes from me called Creamy Acres. It's an entire farm that they have done up in horror, complete with the maze, complete with people running at you with chainsaws that have no chains on them, obviously. But when they run up on that that hayride with those wielding those chainsaws, they scare the shit out of you, brother. A couple of guys here who have made films. Derek, your latest film is an interesting film. It's called Karen. It's part of the Amityville series. Tell me a little bit. How did you get involved with Karen as an actor?
Well, I got affiliated with the director, Sean, and he kind of introduced the film to me, and I showed some interest on the character that he offered. The character that I play, he's a vineyard owner, and the guy, he strictly is about his business. So anyhow, he has to deal with this Karen who is totally off the wall and little we know psychotic. So I thought this would be a great
a psychotic bitch named Karen. Imagine.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You'll forgive me, Derek. I got a wicked sense of humor.
Oh, that's okay. That's good. So anyway, he picked a location out in the hills of San Diego. It's a big area. They have vineyards and all that. And so I traveled out to California, and
right.
Still warm weather, summertime. And
did they pay you scale?
Yeah.
Or
somewhat.
Below scale?
Yeah.
A little below scale? That's okay. You're a working actor. At least you got paid, so don't bitch.
No bitching here.
There you go. So the other one that you're known for is called Tales from the Dead Zone, which came out in 2020. Tell everybody a little bit about the Dead Zone.
Well, the Dead Zone is an anthology series. It's a segment of events of a twisted medical director and his assistants, which I'm one of the assistants, and they go around finding dead bodies, car crashes, and victims. And the medical director, he will imagine how they live their lives. This film's still in post-production, which it should be out this year. What's interesting, as far as the wrestling fans go, Bret Hart is one of the main stars of the film.
That's fucking hilarious to me. I just think that's funny shit.
But yeah, we shot this film in Canada,
right,
up in the Edmonton area. It was, in October.
Brett doesn't want to travel to go to work. I know. I know why you did it in Canada, brother. Brett don't want to travel to go to work. So that's in post production. When is the final release date set for? Is there a release date yet?
There's none set at the moment. Last I talked to the film director, he's just about has the editing done, and he still has to do some with the color and sound and special effects, I believe. But
yeah,
I'm assuming that that won't take too much time. I mean, I
Yeah.
hope.
All righty. Mike Messier, you are, as I said at the top of the show, the most accomplished here. Certainly the guy that's been doing this the longest. You are the caretaker. I call you the caretaker. You're the owner of Man in the Camera Films. Your film of notoriety is called Disregard the Vampire. That's the one that won all the accolades and awards. What do you think of horror in film, Mikey?
Well, I think this comparison is not unique to me because someone that films are kind of like punk rock music. If you're just a starting musician, you have a lot of fire in your belly, but maybe you're not. Maybe you haven't been a musician your whole life, or you're a young person. Punk rock is typically where a lot of people go, and I think horror films can be like that too. You can have a lot of movies that are basically friends or in a backyard, and you break out the Karo syrup and you make yourselves a horror film. But on the other hand, you have things that I
you're breaking up a little, Mikey.
Okay,
yeah, Mikey, you were breaking up just a bit at the end there, but I think
let me try without headphones. How's that? Is that better?
No, it's your video. Your audio is great. It was your video. Was just breaking up a bit.
Yeah,
but we were lucky. We caught it all. Scotty.
Yes.
Scotty McCoy. You are the young buck of the crew, but you are the fastest rising young buck that I've seen in quite a while. You are making a little bit of a name for yourself, making some waves in the horror genre. Using a social platform called Kickstarter to fund your films. That's an interesting concept.
Yes.
And Mike Messier and I used to have to go out and hold up people for fucking money. Well, but Mike Messier is independently wealthy, so I'm the only one that's got to hold up people for money.
Yeah.
So how did the idea of kickstarting your horror films come to be, and why horror? Because I know a little bit about you, and you're a God-fearing man. So you know where I'm going with this. Where the hell did horror come from?
So horror actually happened way before I was a Christian, actually. It was when I was young, 6, 7 years old. The first film I saw was Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. And that was actually rented, obviously, on VHS, because back in the mid 90s there was no DVDs really, and my mom and dad rented it for me, and I watched it and I loved it. I was scared shitless, but I loved it. And I started from the beginning, from parts 1 through whatever. I believe Jason Goes to Hell was out at the time, the most recent, and saw all those, and then I saw the Halloweens, Nightmare on Elm Street, and the rest was history. And I was a Christian probably since I was, I would say teen years, but I became more stronger in my faith when my dad initially got diagnosed with brain cancer. But my love for horror always stayed, and I always separated religion from entertainment. Because it's not like I'm gonna watch these movies and be like, you know what, I feel like bashing somebody against the tree with a sleeping bag.
Good. Thank you. Can I say something to the religious right out there?
Yeah.
It's fucking entertainment, okay? It's a movie. It's not real life. It's a movie, folks.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Get over yourselves and stop thumping your Bibles and start reading the damn things. That's my promo for the night. Mike Messier, I found out something the other night by way of Scotty McCoy you might be interested in.
Yes.
Our friend, Mr. Zabisco, was actually offered the lead role in The Hills Have Eyes.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Yeah. He turned it down and never turned down another movie.
He turned... Imagine that had been Zabisco.
Yeah. I found that Scotty and I talked about that when I did my interview with Scotty, and then Larry's interview was right after mine. And I went, Son of a bitch! You could have been a giant star, like a film star.
Yeah.
Everybody
Film star,
in the wrestling world knows who Larry is.
Yep.
But I would
Yeah.
have loved to seen him in that lead role, man. That part was great.
Mhm. Yeah, he
Uh,
said that he ended up he said he never turned down another movie since, and a couple years ago before COVID, the movie he didn't turn down because of his little agreement was he ended up doing Pro Wrestlers versus Aliens.
yeah,
Mm.
by the
Never
way, there's a series of films out. If you haven't seen them, you just got to shake your head. The first one was with Roddy Piper and Shane Douglas and a bunch of, enhancement talent called Wrestlers versus Zombies.
Mm-hmm.
The next one was Wrestlers versus Aliens. There's one out now. My guest the other night, Charlie Norris, is Wrestlers versus MILFs.
Oh boy!
I can't make this shit up.
Wow.
I can't make this up. Okay.
When they make the
Wrestlers versus MILFs.
That'd be interesting.
yeah.
He talked about it. He was in the movie. He talked about it.
Speaking
Watch
of
the
Amityville
show.
Karen, by the way, I actually am good friends with Sean C. Phillips and the writer of the movie, Julianne Prescott. And I actually have Julianne coming on the show. She was supposed to be on tomorrow, but it might end up getting postponed because she has something come up. So I just wanted to let you know.
I'll tell you what, Scotty, I'll tell you what, my friend, and I'm going to do
Sounds
this
good.
on air.
Okay.
I'm going to do this on air. If you'll save that interview for Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
bring her on to my show and you can interview her on my show because I got some questions too.
I know it's scheduled for tomorrow, but if she isn't able to do it, I won't be able to have her back till June because I'm booked through May.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I only have one open night from now until September, and it's this week. And I swear it's the only night between now and September. It
Nice.
happens to be the 21st. But interestingly enough, on the 21st, as a side note, on April 21st, Thursday, marijuana becomes legal to buy in New Jersey.
Ooh.
What?
Oh,
Yep.
Party-
without a
Party
prescription, and
Angelo's
without a
place.
medical card. You can go to any place that sells pot and buy it,
Party at
damn.
Angelo's house.
including your local dealer. If you still have
Wow. Interesting.
if you
Interesting.
still have a dealer. That's a side note. We're going to actually I may actually talk about that. Mikey, what are you doing Thursday? You want to talk about the legalization of pot Thursday?
Yeah, I think I'm available. Yeah, that's an interesting topic for me because I'm not really into it, but I kind of have mixed feelings about that. So it might be good for me to be on the show and talk to you about it because I can see the pros
Yeah, I
and
want
cons.
to talk about it. In fact, I might even smoke a joint on the air because it's legal now.
Yeah,
I use it, and I'll tell everybody, I use it for medicinal reasons because I have
Mhm.
back pain and I have glaucoma.
Mhm.
And so, and it does help. I don't care what
Yeah.
anybody says, it helps.
Nice.
Because
Nice.
after you have a couple of hits of that shit, you don't give a fuck about nothing. Shit. So listen, we're talking about the horror films. And Scotty, let's talk about you and I mentioned it the other night on the interview we did together. 72. Let's talk about 72. What is 72? What does it refer to? And walk me through the process of how this came about. Who's the screenwriter? Obviously, you're the director and producer, right?
I didn't direct it. Carl Miller directed and wrote it.
Oh,
I
okay.
produced it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you produced it though.
Yes. Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
So I
Yes.
want to make sure that we give proper credit. And
Yes,
Carl
absolutely.
Miller.
Carl Miller.
And
Correct.
Carl Miller is the director of
And
72.
screenwriter. Correct.
So how did this project come about? Was this a passion project for you?
No, actually, it was a spur of the moment project. So I made a joke to one of my good friends, Amanda Megan, who's also in the industry. And I went to high school with her, and I made a joke to her about because I seen Zach Ward from Freddy vs. Jason and A Christmas Story. And I'm friends with him, and I spoke to Zach, and I'm and he mentioned about his mom, who's also an actress, being involved in a movie called Killer Party. And and I was like, I mentioned to Amanda, I go, hey Amanda, what do you think about making a movie based off of COVID, and we call it Killer Party, and we basically, it's like a party being like kind of like a cabin fever, but in the woods type of situation. And she really liked it. She goes, you know what, I really like that idea. And I mentioned it to Carl, who at the time was just the COO of the company. He's now the co-owner of Gravestone Films along with me. And I gave Carl the duty to write it and bounce ideas off us if he needs any ideas, and he did. And basically, the premise of 72 was inspired by COVID. We changed the name while we were writing it, because the world is under a mandatory 72-hour quarantine because there's this really deadly virus out there, and because of the virus, we're under Martial's law, and there's 3 different storylines in it. There's the campers. There's 7 campers, and they're going into the woods to meet 2 of the campers' cousin, James, played by yours truly, who is this sarcastic, naive, stupid person. So
you
pretty
sarcastic,
pretty much me. Yeah. And so he takes them into the woods. It turns out it's not really the woods, so to speak. It's more of civilization than they anticipated. But anyways, that's where they went to go because they wanted to get away from the world. They wanted to quarantine together. And they decided that it would be great to do it as friends. And then, when 72 hours is up, they can go back to living normally. Turns out that one of the people in that party actually is asymptomatic, and they don't know it, and it spreads to everybody, and they start getting symptoms and dying off and everything like that. So then there's
what it sounds like to me, and I just as you're talking, a couple of films popped into my mind that looks like they met each other. It sounds like Contagion meets The Village.
Yep. And then we have another
Shyamalan, The Village.
Yep.
And Contagion, they got together, they had a cluster together, and 72 was born.
Yep, pretty much. And then we have another section, like in the same movie, another different area where there's a news reporting team. There's a cameraman, a weather girl, and a news anchor, and they're quarantining in the weather girl's house, and they're reporting on the virus, as it's happening throughout the 72 hours. And then there's a third team, known as what we call the 3, and they have been waiting for something like this to happen so they can murder, steal, loot, do whatever their heart's desires. And at the end of the movie, the surviving members of each of the groups, their stories collide at the end. So,
Are you familiar with a guy named George Romero?
Yes, I am. Night of the Living Dead.
Absolutely. The king of the zombie films, George Romero. An amazing director. I saw the first time I saw the original Night of the Living Dead was 1966 or 67 when it came out.
Coming to get you, Angelo.
They're coming to get you, Barbara. Love that. That movie, as subtle as it was, scared the fuck out of a little kid, 8-10-year-old kid at the time, because it was all too eerily real. Especially for me, because there was a guy in the film, and Mike Messier will appreciate this, a guy named Bill Cardille. They called him Chili Willie Cardille. He was a wrestling announcer in Pittsburgh, and he played the newscaster in the film. That's what made it real for me, because I knew who he was even as a little kid, because I watched wrestling. Studio wrestling from Pittsburgh.
Nice.
But I love those concept movies. I really do. Why don't we have more of them? I'll give you a perfect example of a concept movie. Oh, where did he go? Where'd Derek go? A perfect example of a concept movie, of course, Night of the Living Dead. is the classic example. But
Mhm.
another one that comes to mind is a film called what the hell is it? I just had a brain fart. Oh damn, what's that woman's name? Oh shit. It's not the it's about this underground society. What the fuck is it called? I'll have to think of it.
Eyes Wide Shut.
No, not that one, Mikey. Natalie Portman's in it. I know that.
Okay.
I'll look it up quick.
Not Black Swan.
No, it's like it sounds like something like a resurrection or is
I think you're thinking of Resident Evil. I think you're thinking of Resident Evil with it's not Natalie Portman.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
Not Natalie, it's somebody else. It's another.
There was a series of them, right? Resident Evil.
Mila
Jovovich. There were a series. That's
Michelle
the one.
Rodriguez.
Do I have the actress wrong?
It's Mila Jovovich.
I thought it was Natalie Portman.
It's Mila Jovovich and Michelle Rodriguez.
That's her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They've been making those since 2002.
Yeah, and she's the same actress that was in that Bruce Willis film, right?
Yes. Fifth Element.
Like a futuristic film.
The Fifth Element.
That's
the
the
Fifth
one.
Element.
Yeah.
The Fifth Element. Yes.
The white
I know it has
bandages
some kind of futuristic. I'm not real good on certain names. Like I could tell you what movies they were in, but sometimes I have a brain fart. I'm
Right.
63. Okay, so I'm old. So I guess Derek took a powder on us. So we'll get him out of here.
Well, I was going to say, Angela, there's a movie out that Scotty might have seen as well called X. That's a horror film.
Yeah, that just came out.
Yeah, it just came out. I saw it in the theater about 2 weeks ago. It's kind of what you would call a grindhouse horror film. And so looking at some of Scotty's stuff, I think Scotty is kind of
I
got
actually
one
want to
foot in
talk
the
about
grindhouse
that,
world.
Mikey.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mikey, I actually want to talk about that. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Go continue that conversation.
Well, Scotty is there's horror and there's all types of subcategories of horror. Like I said, like A Quiet Place and The Conjuring are kind of movies that I like. But when you talk about Grindhouse, a lot of people think of that Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez collaboration from 15 or 20 years ago. But really even more Grindhouse than that is this movie X. And I'm kind of looking at your stuff too, thinking that you got 1 foot in the Grindhouse world. Is that accurate?
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. My favorite subgenre of horror is slashers. I'm like a typical slasher person.
You
I like that
love Fred
campy.
Olin Ray then.
I love the campy, the cheesy, all that stuff. I like the low budget stuff. It's just great. Like I didn't watch this one yet, but this is on my budget list. Is like Titanic 666, where where Titanic 3 is pretty much going the same route as the original ship, and the like ghosts of the people that died in the original sinking are like haunting the Titanic 3 or something like that. And I didn't see it yet. I just seen briefly what it was about, and it's on Tubi. But that's something I would like to see. But yeah, I like the grindhouse kind of stuff.
Interesting stuff. You can't be. Well, not that you can't be, but it's very difficult to be a horror fan if you're not a fan of Stephen King. How are? I'm assuming that was a thumbs up, huh?
Yeah, he's an inspiration of mine. He's actually what helped me become a better author myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Mikey. You want to talk about the Stephen King's effect on film and literature?
I think Stephen King, I could be wrong, but didn't he write The Green Mile, which is kind of a classic drama? That's not horror, but Christine, as far as the horror films go, Christine, Pet Sematary, that they've made 2 good movies, at least 2. I think a reboot of it, and there's so many. Maximum Overdrive that had the AC/DC soundtrack. I actually read Stephen King's book titled On Writing, where he talks about why he became a writer, Stephen King. And the story that he tells is that when he was a kid, he had a painful ear infection, and his mother took him to see the doctor. And the doctor had like this giant tong or something that he put in the young Stephen King's ear. And the way that Stephen, whenever he wrote this book, he remembered that visual story of this taking this object into his ear, and that started him writing horror stories.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
So how did King affect you then, Scotty? Was it the literature first, or was it the visualization of the literature?
Literature first, because I remember in high school and elementary school, we had to do book reports, and everybody would do, Dr. Seuss in elementary school, or they would do like Harry Potter in high school, where I would do horror stuff. I would do, It, and I would do Silver Bullet or whatever, or Children of the Corn, like stuff that Stephen King did like that. The Shining was great. Which, by the way, The Shining is totally different from the book to the movie. But I just been a big fan of Stephen King, and I have 5 books out. 3 of them are horror, and I have another one coming out through my agency. And most of my books are trivia books, and I always joked saying I'm going to be the Stephen King of horror trivia books.
Interesting. It's funny that you say trivia. Mike Messier just wrote a wrestling trivia book. Mikey, you want to promote that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, Angelo. It's on Amazon Kindle Vella. So if anyone has a laptop or a desktop or even an iPhone or any type of Android, you can just go to Amazon Pro Wrestling Trivia. And I labeled it as being written by Smart Mike Messier, kind of a play.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, there was some good questions in there, and trivia is fun,
Good.
and
Yeah,
wrestling is interesting, Angelo, because like wrestling and horror films are like these subcultures, and they cross over with each other. It's Ox Baker's birthday, by the way, and I had my Ox Baker documentary. Yeah, today's Ox's birthday, so our buddy Ox.
Oh wow!
But I did a documentary called Ox Baker, One of the Boys, and it played in Charlotte, North Carolina's weekend horror festival, and they had like this, hotel that they took over, and so many people come, and they wear, like they wear the costumes like the Comic-Con girls and guys, and actors are there. Carl Weathers from the Rocky films and the new Star Wars show was, and it was a lot of fun, and you can see that there was definitely a pro wrestling element there, because a lot of people did come to see my Ox Baker documentary out of respect, because they knew him from Escape from New York, or they were
we
just.
Should also tell people. Yeah, I also wanted not to get too far ahead. I want to let people know that Mike Messier did the eulogy at Ox's funeral.
Nice.
Yeah, I wrote a poem. I wrote a poem. Like I think the 2 days before the funeral, and I did feel like I was being possessed by the spirit of Ox when I was writing the poem, and then I read it at both his funeral and the memorial service. And Ox was a bigger than life guy, and so it's nice to be here with you guys who have an appreciation for wrestling and horror, because Ox was definitely a big part of both of those worlds.
Yep,
absolutely. So let me ask you a question, Scotty. How do you incorporate your love of the campy with true gut-wrenching blood and guts gore, the kind of stuff that I like from people like Fred Olin Ray, who was they referred to him as the king of the slasher films.
Right. The secret
of giving people an example of what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah.
On The Pit and the Pendulum, they used a quart of stage blood for the entire film. Fred Olin Ray uses 40 or 50 gallons for his films. Like, it's just a blood fest, and people like that. And, you have to be of a certain, perhaps, mindset or lack thereof to enjoy horror. I
Yeah.
like it, but then again,
Mhm.
I'm not all there anyway, so it speaks to me. So how did that speak to you, and what are you of the mindset that camp and true blood and guts horror can coexist in a film?
It can, and the trick I use for filmmaking is taking inspiration from other films, but also being your own original format, not stealing ideas, but using it as inspiration. I like doing when I do slasher films, and campy slasher films are quote unquote Friday the 13th films. They're very
Absolutely.
campy, very corny. The premise to Friday the 13th, and that's pretty much all of the movies, is a group of counselors or a group of teenagers going to the camp, and they're horny, they're getting naked, they're having sex, they're doing drugs, and they're being killed. And then there's one final girl and sometimes a final boy left that is going to kill the killer. And then he'll be back the next movie. That's pretty much the premise of every
It
single one of them.
reminds me of every film ever done by Trauma Films
Yeah.
and Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Kurtz.
Yes. Yep.
You
And
know?
I use how I do it is I use Friday the 13th as my inspiration for a lot of my deaths. Not copying the deaths, but I
Yeah.
use it as in creative deaths. In my first movie, Sam Hain, or otherwise known as Samhain,
Mhm.
I use a death in there that is so original that I've never seen done before, where we drown a teenage girl in a bowl of cereal. Like, I mean, it's inventive, it's creative. It
I
might be
love it.
bloodless, but it's I've never seen it before. So
Gotta be
why
a
not
big
do
bull
it?
or a small girl, right?
Right.
That's
And
funny.
then
I
when they
love
lifted
it.
up her head, that's where we used the campy. It spelled out the final girl's name, who was the daughter of the killer, because it was the alphabet cereal. So it spelled
Oh
out on her
my God,
forehead,
that's
Sammy,
hilarious.
Sami.
I love it. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Mike Messier,
Yes.
horror is not often equated with originality because it's been done. Horror is it's a lot of it is repetitious, and so how important is and I want you to follow up on what Scotty was talking about.
Sure.
How important is original horror, and is there such thing as original horror?
Well, I would mention those films, like I said, A Quiet 2, that's been in the theaters the last couple of years, and the whole Conjuring series, although that's becoming kind of repetitious to itself because they're doing
Yeah.
so many sequels of it. But
Mhm.
I think there is room for originality in horror. But here's the thing, and Scotty can probably speak on this better than I can, but amongst the horror film audience, there's a lot of people that just want a movie to pop in the DVD player or to live stream. And back when Scotty was a kid, a VHS tape that
Mhm.
you and your friends can sit around and talk over. And like
Mhm.
some of the horror film fans are not looking for high art cinema. They're looking for a
Mhm.
party movie, like a movie they can have
Yeah.
as a backdrop to
Mhm.
socialize with and talk during. And I've hung out with people that are like that. They like fans of, lack of a better term, bad movies, but they make it a fun experience because the social aspect of sitting around
Mhm.
watching this movie, even if they're making fun of it, that's why they're not really have to make a high art horror film for it to be
Yeah.
successful, as long as you're
Yeah.
connecting with an audience. And I think Trauma Films is a great example of a group that
Mhm.
does that. But yeah, Scotty,
Yeah.
you can pick up on that if you want.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
really campy stuff. Go ahead, Scotty.
yeah, like there's movies out there, and Tubi is pretty much the prime example of a location where all these movies are situated.
I
I'm a
love
part.
Tubi TV.
Yeah, I'm a
I
part
love
of
Tubi TV.
a lot of, in the indie community itself. I'm a large part of helping promote some of these movies, and some of them coming out are Bathtub Shark Attack. There's already on Tubi Killer Sofa. So like they have movies like these that are very campy, and a good example of a very, very, very bad movie, so bad that it's good that you want to watch it, and if it's on, you're like, this is horrible. Give me more. Is Sharknado or Zombie Tidal Wave.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw one. It had I'll never forget it. Tara Reid and Lorenzo Lamas.
Mhm.
Fernando Lamas' son, Lorenzo Lamas. It was called Land Shark.
Mhm.
It literally featured a shark that came out of the water and was walking on its back fins. Can't make this shit up. I'm not even. It was on. What the hell was that network? It wasn't not A&E. That the one that shows all that stupid shit. It's like Sci-Fi or
Sci-Fi Channel, yeah.
Sci-Fi Channel. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
You
I
can't get
remember. What the hell? The other fella was in it too. A Casper Van Dien,
Okay.
who does a lot of those
Mhm.
indie films.
Yeah.
But and he's a pretty good little actor too. But I just like to see him in a film like that with, Lorenzo Lamas
Yeah.
is not like by no means an A-list actor. He may be like a C or D-list actor.
Yeah,
Certainly not like his father. But Tara Reid, who doesn't even get up on the list. She was
Right.
like news for 5 minutes and then she disappeared.
you can't
But
get much better when you have I think it's the second Sharknado. You can't get much better when the shark gets released from the tornado, goes into the Live with Kelly and Michael studio back when Michael Strahan hosted it, and
Yeah.
Kelly Ripa's there kicking the shark, and Michael Strahan's there punching the shark in the head.
this is for real. You got that, and then you've got the opposite end of that. And I want to talk to you about. It's kind of a dark element of independent horror film.
Okay.
And I saw this actually on Tubi, and I reached out to one of the participants and interviewed him. The underground horror film that borders on snuff, and some of them are snuff, and some of them are purported snuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's an entire subculture of, underground horror, and I know that you know what I'm talking about, Scotty. Can we address that? Like, how is that regulated? How do you who knows whether these are real murders taking place on film?
It's very it can be very complex to tell because sometimes the death scenes look so real. They really do. And it really depends who you have doing your SFX. Sometimes they make it look really good. And I credit somebody as a top SFX artist who could make a death scene look really real and you wouldn't know if it's real or not. And that's Tom Savini. Like Tom Savini is
Tom Savini's the best.
He's a legend, like an icon of special effects. So he's one of them people that you wouldn't know if the death of the scene was legit or not.
And Tom Savini is an interesting kind of guy because he's not a young guy. He's been around a long time. Yeah. He's in his latter 70s now.
Yeah.
But Tom is the kind of guy that he's the first guy I saw use live bugs to come out of someone's stomach, and as stomach, came up and ruptured out, which was graphic enough. But then to see, 10,000 live cockroaches, descending from the disembodied bowels of this individual was quite a scene.
Tom Savini was in I believe it was the Vietnam War, if I'm not mistaken, and he said that because of his experience there, when he does special effects, if the effects don't look real enough, like what he saw over in Vietnam, then he knew it wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I can absolutely believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of Tom's work. I've watched documentaries on him, and his process is fascinating and almost scary simple.
Yeah,
because it's really, really not complex or complicated at all. He takes the basic elements of fear, and like we do in wrestling, you take the simple elements and just amplify them.
Yep.
And that's what he does so well.
Yeah, I know in our short film that we made, our company made on Friday the 13th, it was a short fan film. We used Tom Savini's work as an as like inspiration to doing our work, meaning we called it the poor man's thrift store special effects. Everything was done in under $100, and that's what Tom was a genius at. He can make
Absolutely.
it. He can make the most real special effects for the most affordable budgets.
And that's exactly, you just confirmed what I was talking about. He's like, that's
Yep.
so simple, but
Yep.
he takes these simplistic elements and creates this genius with it.
Creates artwork.
I saw a film called Sandman.
Mhm.
It was, and I used the word directed by very, very loosely. Directed by a guy named Eric Rose.
Mhm.
And he was part of this underground, is it real, is it not real genre, right?
Mhm.
And I wonder how somebody like that gets away with what they do. Like, he literally stalks young girls with this camera. He takes them out into the woods and proceeds to, quote, kill them, unquote. How is that entertaining? Like, why would you do that unless you were like something was wrong with you? What
It
you know,
depends. It
either
depends
you
what his
guys
sense of
all
humor is, I
three-
guess.
What's that? Say it again.
It depends what his sense of humor is, I guess, or what his form of entertainment is.
Mikey, what do you think about all that? The
It's
so-called, like, fluff, snuff
snuff
film.
films. I mean, there was a movie I think about that industry. Wasn't it called like 8mm with Nicolas Cage?
Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
that'll scare the
that's
shit out of you. Yeah, 8mm was an interesting film.
right. So that movie was kind of an analysis of what you're describing, which, to be honest, I've kind of forgotten about it because I guess the closest I've seen to these type of movies is real old school, which is the Faces of Death series. So if people remember that, the Faces of Death series were movies that basically showed different ways people died. Some guy getting eaten by a snake, or somebody getting a crocodile attack, and then they had footage of like death row situations and lethal injections. And with that, I think they did at least 4 or 5 Faces of Death, and they got
there were 5 of them.
Right. They got a little more cartoony with time, meaning that they started to look like they were kind of fake.
Yeah.
I don't know how those got released either, to tell you the truth. But I mean, I remember I saw them when I was pretty young, 14 or 15, renting them
Oh
from the
God,
school.
yeah. Well, I'm old enough to remember when a film came out called Snuff.
Right.
That was the name of the film. It was called Snuff. And nothing happened in that film until the last 3 minutes. And they purportedly disemboweled a woman with, a saw, like an electrical saw, and cut her hands off allegedly. But wouldn't you know, funny enough, about a year later, I saw that same actress in another snuff film.
Back. She grew her hands back.
Yeah, imagine, she got her bowels back and she got her hands back, and
Right.
and I know it was after the fact, so
F snuff. It's fake snuff, I guess.
yeah, crazy
I mean,
stuff.
If you think about stuff like when the Blair Witch Project came out,
Yeah.
that was probably the first movie that got a lot of ticket sales through their website. Like, that's going back to 99, I think.
Yeah.
And I actually met one of the directors of that. I think his name is Edgar or Edmund or something. But those guys really put a lot of effort into building a hype that, hey, we know that this is probably BS, but maybe it's real. Kind of like a good wrestling match. Like, it convinced a lot of people, you got to go see this Blair Witch because there's something to it.
Yeah.
And I didn't particularly like the movie Blair Witch Project, but I liked the marketing of it. The marketing of it was genius. And
I thought the marketing of it was completely original for its time.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, that same originality, and I think we can all agree, that same originality has now worn off because it's been so overused.
Yeah.
You know, so and so manipulated that it's like,
Yeah.
okay, they did then they did Blair Witch 2. Okay, what's next? Blair Witch meets Mickey Mouse. Like come on.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and why the need for sequels? Why? Blair
More
Witch
money.
was
Yep.
they should have kept the mystery. Is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
But the
Like
One
even
release.
Paranormal Activity, that went from being very scary, and now they have what, like 7, 8, 9 of them, and
Yeah,
it's like pretty much the same premise to an extent.
it's the same film.
Yeah.
Released 7 times.
Yeah.
What
Pretty
they
much.
did,
Yeah.
Scotty. That's what they did.
Yep.
So
Pretty
let me
much.
ask you a question,
That's not.
Scotty. A film you haven't done yet, without giving away the premise of it or the thought behind it, a film that you have not yet done that you want to do, but for whatever reason you're holding back on. And by that smile, I know there's something in that little brain of yours.
I have
know you're working
I
on
have
something.
I have two ideas. One of them where me and Carl are discussing internally about. The other one Carl says is never going to happen. And the
Okay.
one that's never going to happen is a sequel to our first movie, Samhain, but I wanted to do Samhain as an anthology series where every episode, after the first one, every film would be having a different subtitle related to Samhain. For example, Samhain, a festival to die for, and each one would have like a different story, kind of like Halloween 3 was meant to be for the Halloween franchise. Except we weren't gonna have 2 films with Michael Myers where he became so great that when he wasn't in the third one, it's like, screw this. So that's kind of the one I would really wanted to do, but Carl's like, yes, not happening, and I'm like, well, I guess it's not happening unless I do it. And I don't feel like doing it myself. It's easier doing making films when you have help. It's when you're doing it. I did Samhain all by myself, and that was so stressful. I must have gained 20 gray hairs by the end of it.
Wow.
The other one that we're in discussions with without getting really in detail is I made a joke to Carl, and I said that it seems like the title Samhain, because there's a couple movies out there that are being made currently with that name, that seem to be dead in the water and not going anywhere, and it's
Right.
like I said to him, I said, it seems like this movie title is cursed for anybody that uses it. He says, what about we make a movie where people are making a movie that is cursed, and they can't, like, every time they're trying to get it done, it just can't get done.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an idea we tossed out there. Not that we're gonna do it. We have a couple of ideas in talks, and that's one of them that we came up with.
I like
But
that idea.
that was
Good.
What'd you say?
I like that idea of the cursed movie project. Which
Yeah, I
think a lot
think
of
that would be
filmmakers
pretty
can relate
clever.
to.
Well,
And
there actually was one, gentlemen, but you have to be old enough to remember it. It was called Return to Horror High.
I heard of it. I think I've even seen that one once.
It's featured a young new actor named George Clooney.
Ooh.
And a couple of veteran actors named Maureen McCormick, the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, Marsha.
And a young actor, I say young,
Uh-huh.
young, a guy named Vince Edward, who played Dr. Ben Casey on television in the 1960s. But you'd have to be my age to know this film.
Right. I heard of the film. I think I'd seen it, but I don't remember. It might have been a different Horror High one than I've seen.
Yeah, it was called Return to Horror High. But that's the premise of it. It's a movie about a haunted movie.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good. That's it, and it's original enough that it might have been done once, even twice, but it hasn't been overly done like the Conjuring franchise or the Paranormal Activities.
No, it was actually done twice.
Yeah.
It was done Return to Horror High, and then it was back to Horror High.
Okay.
So, and the idea behind the premise behind the first one is that the half of the filmmakers are alumni of the school. They're being used as gaffers. They're being used as extra cast extras. etc. You get the idea.
Yep.
And then back to Horror High is where they go back and try to finish where part one, where part one left off
Yeah.
at.
Okay.
But they were, interestingly enough, they were two unrelated films. In other words,
Yeah.
done by two different directors
Okay.
with the same, high school.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea. And Mikey Messier, you've
Yes.
done a bunch of movies.
Yeah.
A film that you haven't done for whatever reason that may be keeping you from doing this film. The idea's in your head, but but something's keeping you from doing it.
Well, I mean, we go back to the book, Angelo, because as you might remember, A Distance from Dying Night are the vampire, and when I couldn't make the film because I didn't have the money to make it properly, my thought was, well, how do I get more people to read this script? Well, most people don't like reading scripts. The general public doesn't like reading screenplays, and even people in the film industry don't like reading screenplays. So the other option was, why not write it as a novel? Write it as a novel, and that's what I did. And self-publishing, that was a real godsend. Like people don't. A lot of people don't like Amazon because it's a big corporate company, but for me, the fact that I can publish my books at no upfront cost to me and people can order them for a moderate price and get them delivered to their home, that's great.
Yep.
And I just did a second one, Fighter
That's what
Play
I did.
Basketball. So thank you. Yeah. So basically, I would say this one, A Distance from Avalon. And one other thing about that project is I decided to memorize a monologue from the lead villain character, Jean Le Coin Distance. And last summer of 2021, I memorized the monologue and I filmed myself in Lake Dora, Florida, doing the monologue. I grew my hair longer than it's ever been. And I made a short film in the character that I wrote. And this character, the two other actors had started to do, but not finished for various reasons, I was at least able to get on screen as a monologue. So A Distance from Avalon, thanks for asking. That's the project that I'm still pushing, along with 10 other projects, but that's the one that is probably the closest to me right now.
Let's talk about a subject near and dear to every filmmaker, money. Let's talk about money. You see where I'm going with this one, Scotty McCoy. I come right back to you. Let's talk about how do you get money to make your movie? Where does it come from? Who do you have to beat up? I mean, who do you have to solicit?
Well, I pickpocket everybody around Baltimore, and they don't even know it.
There you go.
Yep. No. Indiegogo is what I use. I'm pretty big and prominent in the indie film community, and a lot of people know me, a lot of connections. And Indiegogo is great because people donate, but they get something in return when you offer perks for them to get, whether it's just an end credit thank you, or they can, if they want to be an actor, but they are very bad at auditioning, or they want to be an actor and don't know how to really get their start, they can donate to be and have an extra role in the movie, or even a medium-sized part in the movie, or in a scene of the movie, or they can get a t-shirt or a DVD, digital download of the movie. Give them so many different options that they could choose from and donate to. And if they don't want any perk, or the perks are too expensive, say they can't afford $5 for the smallest perk, they could just donate $1 or $2 on their own, not get any perk, and still donate. Or they can not donate anything at all if they can't afford it, and it's free to share it, and then their friends and all their connections will see it. So there's the Indiegogo is probably the most efficient way. Now, I have to admit, Indiegogo is becoming very overly used, but it's not a bad thing. But a lot of people are using Indiegogo to make their films, and I mean, some people are legitimate, other people are not, and you really got to do your research on the people that are making these films. But just because you're a first-time filmmaker does not mean that they're not a reliable person or filmmaker.
Is GoFundMe and Kickstarter viable options and alternatives to Indiegogo?
They can be, but the difference is Indiegogo has two options. You can either it's either all or nothing, where you have to meet your goal to get your money, or with Indiegogo you can get a fixed, I believe it's called a fixed income, where you
Mhm.
basically whatever you make, even if you don't meet your goal, you get. Whereas where with GoFundMe and Kickstarter, you can have perks, I believe. I don't know if you can with GoFundMe. Kickstarter, I think you can. One of them you can't though. You can't
Right.
get perks, but the other one you can. But it's an all or nothing. You meet your goal, or everybody gets refunded.
Mike Messier, talk
Yes.
to me about funding films. Aside from the fact that you, as the world knows, you're independently wealthy, how do you fund your films, Mike?
You know, it's hard, to be honest with you. And
Mhm.
Scotty, I am, because I've tried the GoFundMe or the Kickstarter a couple of times, and it hasn't worked out for me. So I have a lot of
Mhm.
respect for anybody who can pull it off like Scotty, because you
Yeah.
really kind of put yourself out there. And I think
Yep.
for Scotty, because he's made a connection probably with a fan base that support him and other filmmakers, that he's doing well with it.
Mhm.
For me, I found it very difficult. You know, the biggest movie budget that I had as far as my own creations, Angelo, was about $12,000, and that was for my feature film Blood Sugar Sedace. And how did that get funded? Well, I got hit by a drunk driver, and when I did, I said, I guess I'm going to make a movie. And so I got a lawyer, and he told me the amount of money I'd probably get in about a year once the case got settled, which it did, and he was pretty much spot on. So I started
Nice.
making the movie without even having the money in hand. I started.
Yeah.
I had 2 auditions for the 4 characters in the film, cast the people, and then we started rehearsing once a week for about
Mhm.
8 or 9 months, to be honest with you, before I even got the money in hand to buy the
Yeah.
equipment. So that movie,
Mhm.
Blood Sugar Sedace, can be seen on subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel.
Nice.
Mhm.
That's the most amount of money I've ever had to make a movie, and it
Mhm.
came from blood money, my blood, so to speak.
Yeah. Scotty,
I
what's the most you
Good.
ever spent on a budget?
So with our first movie, Samhain, it was we had an Indiegogo, but I didn't have connections like I do now. So
Yeah.
I only raised like $200. So the rest of it came out of my pocket. So I spent $6,000 of my hard-earned cash that I work for my full-time job to make that
Right.
movie. $6,000, and it
What do you
had.
do for a living? Let me just for the record.
I'm
What do you do for like?
I'm
What's your
I'm
shoot job?
I'm a senior web developer for the United States Coast Guard.
Oh,
Yep.
so you
So
are independently wealthy. Okay.
pretty much, yes.
Good for
But
you.
yeah, thank you. But yeah, I recommend when you're making a movie, especially your first movie, don't go as big as I did with my movie, because by the end of it, we had 32 cast and crew members for the movie. We had 3 months to film the movie, and yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't good. And now when you look at the final product, you could tell it was rushed, it was low budget, it we were first time filmmakers, mistakes were made, you could tell it wasn't that good. But
I have a
yeah,
question right there because you
sure.
you said something. I want to chime in right there.
Sure.
Do investors in your film, do they get a residual? Do they get a payback for their investment?
No, they get like when I do Indiegogo, they'll get. I
Right.
don't use actual investors. When I do Indiegogo, their investment, they get a perk. So the money they donate, obviously I'm going to charge them more than what it costs, because we
Right.
need to use that money for the perk itself to buy it. But
Yeah.
then we need to use whatever's left over as a profit to make our actual
Okay.
movie.
So
Yeah.
you're giving them a film credit, or you're giving them
Yep.
some sort of a gift package,
Yep.
or something they can hold in their hand for their
Right. Yep.
$500 donation or whatever
Right.
the case.
Yep, and
Um,
72, actually, we made $4,400 in about 60 days, and we still have about maybe 2 grand left, and that's after we upgraded all of our equipment, microphones,
yeah,
camera, all that different stuff, and then we still didn't buy the perks yet. So after the perks are bought and shipped and everything like that,
yeah.
and some of the stuff we already did buy for the perks, because some things that we gave was like the baseball bat that was used for a death scene or whatever, stuff like
Mhm.
that. So we have that, so we just have to pay for shipping. But for example, the baseball bat costs us like $20 on Amazon to buy, and it looks really real. And we sold it for $50.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
Yep.
I
So
could have got you the same baseball bat for $10.
we sold 2 hats, and both hats we bought for about $12 each on Amazon. Sold each for
Yeah.
40.
Now, is this stuff that they were used as props in the film?
They were used as props in the film. Like the bat was used to kill somebody in the movie. The hat, one of the hats I wore, and you
Yeah.
might appreciate this hat. A hat on there says "I heart boobs and beer." No, titties and beer. And for beer, it has for the O's and beer, it had it had like actual beer glasses with beer foam coming out of it.
I
So I thought that
love
was
it.
pretty cool. So we sold that for about $40 and bought it on Amazon for 12. And the other one was like an actual flying eyeball that was worn in the movie, and that was in the same
I
prop.
know a guy that invested $3,000 in a film. I'm not going to tell you who the person was, but I will tell you that it was a Friday the 13th sort of film.
Nice.
Okay, and I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And so that person got diddly dick squat for his $3,000.
Wow.
Is an associate producer credit worth $3,000 in a film these days? I don't know.
No, we usually charge 200 at most.
Okay, so if I wanted to invest money in a Scotty McCoy film, let's say I have a couple of dollars to invest. I want to invest $2,000. What am I going to get for my $2,000?
I mean, you could probably get a bunch of perks for the $2,000. I mean, we don't charge excessive amounts. Like our most was probably $1,000, and you got a T-shirt, you got a DVD with it, you got an executive producer perk, a thank you credit on IMDb, and a thank you credit at the end of the movie. The executive producer perk was in the beginning and the end of the movie and on IMDb. So there was a lot of things that came with it. I think 2 tickets to the premiere. I think we sold one of them.
I'll tell you what I do want. And I want this for my friend Mike Messier, not so much for myself. I want one of them damn Scary Lives Matters t-shirts. He's got a great t-shirt, Mike. It says Scary Lives Matter on it. It's great.
Nice. That's cool.
So Mikey, what's next for you, my friend?
You know,
Where
I
do
want
you
to
go from here?
I'm concentrating on my writing and my acting these days. You know, I hired a nice lady, Anastasia. She's my business of acting coach, and she does like a group class that I'm in twice a month, and then we have individual coaching. So I'm just trying to get more acting gigs for myself, and I'm pushing subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. Finally got over the 1,000 subscriber mark last year, so that felt good. And the Fighter Play Basketball. Thank you. Yeah, the Fighter Play Basketball book that I just spent a lot of time on the last couple of months. It's available for paperback, hardcover on Kindle, and then Distance from Avalon. So good to be here with you, Angelo, and this Scotty guy. Give him credit. He's really out there hustling. I was going to ask Scotty, did you and Derek ever work together? The guy that was on earlier, the actor.
I never worked with him. Like I said, I do know the people that's involved with Amityville Karen, the director and the screenwriter. But I've never worked with Derek before. No.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if he's on the well. He was in his truck, so you know, he may have had to take his load, you know, they get paid by the mile.
Yep.
They also get paid to get there on time. So we'll have Derek back at some point, I'm sure. Promote MikeMessier.com, my friend.
MikeMessier.com has got all your Mike Messier needs, wants, and desires. A lot of my stuff is right there on MikeMessier.com, short films, pro wrestling rants, you know, over on subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. And I'm just going to keep on trucking. But yeah, if people want to see if they like my story, the best thing you can do is go to Amazon and purchase A Distance from Avalon or Fighter Play Basketball or the Pro Wrestling Trivia, if you like. So I appreciate all the shout outs. Thanks.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
And my friend Scotty McCoy, promote yourself. Promote away, my young friend.
All right. So you can check out my website at www.smccoyauthor.net. And on there, I have things to my films. I have you could buy my books that I currently have published through there, what I have in inventory. And you can also buy them on Amazon if you rather them cheaper with shipping and all that. I also have another book coming out, which is going to be published through Bear Manor Media. Through thanks to my literary agent for setting that deal up. That book is going to be titled "The Ultimate Halloween Movie Experience: Michael Myers, the Man, the Monster, the Madness," and that's looking forward to hopefully a September release date. So that we're
How
looking forward
old
to
are
that.
you? Can I ask you that? How old are you?
Yes, I'll be 33 in December.
Literary agent. Can I smack you, please? Literary agent.
Yep,
Listen to this
and I
shit.
have to thank my talent agent for setting me up with my literary agent, and he
Well,
found me.
Mike Messier and I are both going to beat the shit out of you, okay? Well, you
Yep.
know what I say? I say I'm glad I had you here when I could still afford you, which is fucking free. Because when you're famous, I'm not going to be able to touch you.
I'll do
But
you
Mike
favors,
Messier
Angelo. I'll
and
come
I will
on for
still be
nothing
here
for you.
talking about old wrestlers. So,
You can
all right,
check.
my friend. Listen, we are. That was a hell of a show. I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
That's
I
fun.
enjoyed that
Thanks.
a lot.
absolutely.
Stay with us. We have a couple of interesting guests coming up. Next week we will interview and speak to a guy called Mr. Hollywood. They call him the smartest man in show business, Jeffrey Mark. He's a guy that's been around the entertainment business literally his entire life. He was born in the show business, and he will be with us on the 26th of April. On April 28th, we will do our last and final wrestling show, but we're taking it out with a big one. Missy Hyatt, the first lady of pro wrestling, will be here,
Nice.
and I'm looking forward to that. In May, we've got an incredible month. I call it a Hall of Fame week, man. It's going to be a good one. We've got Academy Award writer Bruce Valanche will be with us. Bruce will talk about his life in Hollywood, his work on the Hollywood Squares, and writing for the Academy Awards. We will also have Country Music Hall of Famer and Country Music Writing Hall of Famer Lacey J. Dalton. We will be here live on May the 12th. Bruce Valanche will be here on May the 11th. And on May 10th, I've got the one and only, I got Frankie Sisto. And Frankie, if you don't know who he is, this man is barred from every casino in the world. That's how damn good he is.
Nice.
He's not allowed in any casino worldwide. And that's all I'm going to tell you. But for Mike Messier, MikeMessier.com, Avalonia Film Festival, for Scotty McCoy, the film is 72. When it comes out, buy it. I am Angelo Mad Dog DeCipio. Catch me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're all over the goddamn place. And buy my book. It's called Psychic Fingerprints, A Life's Manifesto. You can get it through me, through the website, or on Amazon.com. Until next time, friends, see you later. Goodbye, Wool. Taking it home. Bye-bye.
See ya.